The deafening crack of gunfire split the afternoon air as Penelope Matthews raced through the endless sea of golden wheat, her breath coming in desperate gasps. Blood seeped through her torn sleeve where the bullet had grazed her, but she wouldn't stop. Behind her, the shouts of angry men grew fainter as she pushed deeper into the vast wheat field that stretched across the Montana Territory. It was 1878, and she had just made the most dangerous decision of her 22 years. She had stolen back what was rightfully hers. Her vision blurred as she ran, the summer heat pressing down like a physical weight. The wheat stalks whipped against her skirts, catching and pulling as if trying to hold her for her pursuers. Each breath burned in her lungs, and the wound on her arm throbbed in time with her racing heart. She had to keep going, had to reach the next town before nightfall. Penelope clutched the small leather pouch containing her mother's wedding ring and the deed to her father's land papers that her father's former business partner had stolen after his death 3 months ago. The same man who now pursued her with his hired guns, determined to silence her claims once and for all. The edges of her vision darkened as she stumbled forward. The blood loss, heat, and exhaustion were taking their toll. Her legs felt like lead, and each step became harder than the last. Finally, her knees buckled beneath her, and she collapsed face first into the wheat, the golden stalks closing over her like a burial shroud. Consciousness came and went in waves. She thought she heard hoofbeats, but they might have been the pounding of her own heart. Then came the sensation of being lifted, strong arms cradling her against a solid chest. The scent of leather, tobacco, and horses filled her nostrils as darkness claimed her once more. Quinn Harrington had been riding the fence line of his modest ranch when he spotted the woman running through his wheat field. At first, he'd been annoyed trespassers were never welcome, but then he'd seen her fall and not get up. Without hesitation, he'd spurred his horse forward, dismounting in a fluid motion when he reached her crumpled form. She was beautiful, even covered in dust and blood, with copper-colored hair escaping from a once neat bun. Her face was pale beneath a spray of freckles, and her breathing was shallow. A quick assessment revealed the bullet graze on her arm not life-threatening, but certainly concerning. More worrying was her state of exhaustion and the heat radiating from her skin. Quinn gently gathered her into his arms, noting how she clutched a small pouch even in unconsciousness. Whoever she was, whatever she was running from, she needed help. He carried her to his horse, somehow managing to mount while holding her securely against him. "Easy now," he murmured to his horse as they set off toward his ranch house. "We've got precious cargo." The woman stirred slightly in his arms but didn't wake. Quinn frowned, scanning the horizon behind them. If someone had shot at her, they might still be in pursuit. He nudged his horse into a faster pace, taking a circuitous route back to his property just in case. Penelope awakened to the sensation of cool water against her lips. She coughed, then greedily drank more of the offered water. As awareness returned, so did panic. She jerked upright, her hand flying to her side where the pouch had been. "Looking for this?" a deep voice asked. A man sat beside the bed, holding out her leather pouch. "It's all there. I didn't take anything." Penelope snatched it from his hand, quickly checking the contents before clutching it to her chest. Only then did she take in her surroundings. A simple but clean bedroom with rough-hewn furniture and calico curtains fluttering at an open window. And the man tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of a stormy sky. He wore the practical clothes of a rancher, and his dark hair was in need of a trim. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice raspy. "Where am I?" "Quinn Harrington," he replied, refilling a cup with water from a pitcher. "You're at my ranch about 15 miles east of Clearwater. Found you passed out in my wheat field with a bullet graze and a fever. That was yesterday afternoon." "Yesterday?" Penelope's eyes widened. "I've been unconscious for a full day," Quinn nodded, handing her the cup. "You needed the rest. Dr. Simmons came by, cleaned and stitched your wound, said you were suffering from exhaustion and mild heat stroke." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Also said it looked like you hadn't eaten properly in days." Penelope sipped the water, avoiding his gaze. "I'm grateful for your help, Mr. Harrington, but I need to leave immediately. In your condition, that would be foolish, miss." She hesitated before answering. "Matthews." "Penelope Matthews." "Well, Miss Matthews, you're welcome to leave once you can stand on your own. But right now, I doubt you could make it across this room without help." As if to prove his point, Penelope pushed aside the quilt covering her and swung her legs over the edge of the bed. She was wearing a man's shirt that engulfed her small frame. Someone had changed her clothes. Heat rushed to her face at the realization. "My sister-in-law, Martha, changed you," Quinn said, reading her expression. "Your dress was filthy and torn. She's washing it now." Determined to prove him wrong, Penelope pushed herself to her feet. The room immediately tilted and her knees buckled. Quinn caught her before she hit the floor, his strong hands gripping her upper arms. "Stubborn," he muttered, helping her back onto the bed. "You've lost blood, you're dehydrated, and you haven't eaten properly in days. Give yourself time to recover." Penelope bit her lip, torn between gratitude and frustration. "You don't understand. There are men looking for me, dangerous men." Quinn's expression hardened. "The same men who put that bullet in your arm," she nodded, unconsciously touching the bandage visible beneath the oversized shirt sleeve. "Do these men have names?" "Victor Holloway and his hired guns," she replied after a moment's hesitation. "He was my father's business partner. When my father died, Holloway forged documents claiming ownership of our ranch and everything in it. He gave me 1 day to leave." Her chin lifted defiantly. "But I couldn't leave without my mother's wedding ring and the real deed to our property, so I took them back." Quinn whistled low. "Victor Holloway from over near Billings. Man's got a reputation for being ruthless and corrupt," Penelope agreed. "That's why I need to reach the federal marshal in Helena. I have proof of his forgery in these papers." Quinn studied her face, taking in the determination in her green eyes despite her weakened state. Finally, he nodded. "All right, but you're not going anywhere until you can stand without falling over. The marshal isn't going anywhere, and this ranch is remote enough that Holloway's men won't find you easily." "And if they do?" she challenged. A slow smile spread across Quinn's face, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Then they'll learn that the Harrington Ranch isn't an easy target." For the first time, Penelope noticed the gun belt hanging on a hook near the door, the well-worn handle of the revolver speaking to frequent use. "You were a gunslinger?" she asked, appraising him with new eyes. "Cavalry during the war." "Then a lawman for a few years in Kansas before settling here." His tone indicated the subject was closed. "Now Martha's prepared some broth for you. Think you can manage it?" As if on cue, a plump, cheerful woman with graying hair entered the room, carrying a tray with a steaming bowl. "Oh, you're awake," she exclaimed. "Wonderful. Quinn was worried sick, barely left your side all night." She set the tray on the bedside table, ignoring Quinn's warning look. "I'm Martha Harrington, Quinn's sister-in-law. My husband James and I live just over the ridge. Quinn sent for me when he found you." Penelope managed a smile. "Thank you for your help, Mrs. Harrington. Martha, please. And it's no trouble at all. It's nice to have another woman around. Quinn lives like a hermit out here." She arranged the pillows behind Penelope so she could sit up. "Now, eat this broth while it's hot. You need your strength." Under Martha's watchful eye, Penelope ate the broth, which was rich and flavorful. Her stomach growled loudly at the first spoonful, reminding her how long it had been since she'd eaten properly. "I'll leave you to rest," Quinn said, moving toward the door. "Martha will stay with you." "You've done enough, Mr. Harrington," Penelope called after him. "I don't want to impose any further." He paused at the doorway, his expression unreadable. "It's no imposition, Miss Matthews. Besides, I made a promise to myself long ago never to turn away someone in need." Something dark flickered in his eyes before he continued. "Rest now. We can discuss your journey to Helena when you're stronger." After he left, Martha helped Penelope finish the broth, then checked her bandage. "The wound is clean, no signs of infection. You're lucky a little to the right, and that bullet would have done much worse than graze you." "I'm grateful to you both," Penelope said sincerely, "but I fear I've brought trouble to your doorstep." Martha waved away her concern. "Quinn can handle trouble, has been since he was 16 years old." She began tidying the room. "He doesn't talk much about his past, but I know he was a respected lawman before coming here. Some say he was the fastest draw in Kansas. Why did he leave?" Penelope asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Martha's cheerful expression sobered. "That's his story to tell if he chooses. But I will say this: Quinn Harrington is the most honorable man I've ever known, save for my James. You couldn't be in safer hands." Later that afternoon, after Martha had left to prepare dinner at her own home, Penelope tried standing again. This time, she managed to remain upright, though her legs trembled with the effort. Carefully, she made her way to the window, clinging to furniture for support. The view took her breath away. Rolling hills covered in wheat stretched in one direction, while pine-covered mountains rose majestically in the other. Directly below her window was a well-kept yard with a vegetable garden, a barn, and corrals containing several horses. It was a modest ranch, but obviously well cared for. A movement caught her eye: Quinn, leading a magnificent black stallion from the barn. Even from a distance, she could see the ease with which he handled the spirited animal, speaking to it in a low voice she couldn't hear. There was a grace to his movements that belied his size. He removed his hat to wipe his brow, revealing thick, dark hair that fell across his forehead. Penelope found herself watching him longer than necessary, admiring the confident set of his shoulders and the gentle way he handled the horse. He was undeniably handsome in a rugged, weathered way that spoke of a life lived outdoors. Nothing like the polished city men her father had always hoped she would marry. Lost in thought, she didn't notice when Quinn looked up and spotted her at the window. Their eyes met across the distance, and for a moment, neither looked away. Then he nodded once, a small gesture of acknowledgement, before returning his attention to the horse. Penelope stepped back from the window, her heart beating unusually fast. She told herself it was just the exertion of standing, nothing more. She had no business noticing the handsome features of her rescuer, not when her life was in such turmoil. Once she was strong enough, she would thank him properly, then continue her journey to Helena. Yet as she made her way back to the bed, she found herself wondering about the mysterious former lawman and what had brought him to this remote Montana ranch. The following morning, Penelope awoke feeling considerably stronger. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, and the scent of coffee and bacon wafted from somewhere in the house. Her dress had been returned, cleaned and mended, laid neatly across a chair. Martha had done an impressive job of repairing the torn sleeve and washing out the bloodstains. After dressing, Penelope attempted to tame her unruly copper hair without a proper brush, finally settling for a simple braid. She was just finishing when a knock came at the door. "Come in," she called, expecting Martha. Instead, Quinn entered, carrying a tray laden with breakfast. He stopped short at the sight of her standing, dressed and alert. "You're looking better," he remarked, setting the tray on a small table. "Martha sent breakfast. She's helping James with a sick calf this morning. Thank you. I'm feeling much stronger today." Penelope moved to the table without assistance, though she still felt unsteady. Quinn pulled out a chair for her. "Eat. Then, if you're up to it, some fresh air might do you good." They ate in companionable silence, Penelope savoring the simple but delicious meal of eggs, bacon, and biscuits with honey. Quinn ate quickly, efficiently, a man accustomed to treating meals as necessary fuel rather than an occasion for conversation. "Have you lived here long?" Penelope asked, breaking the silence. 5 years, he replied. "Bought it from a widow whose husband died in the war. She was returning east to her family." "It's beautiful land," Quinn nodded. "Good water, decent soil. The winters are harsh, but we manage." He looked at her curiously. "Your father's ranch, where was it?" "North of Billings, along the Yellowstone River. Holloway convinced my father to invest in a mining venture. When it failed, he called in his debts. My father died of a heart attack the next day." She swallowed hard. "Holloway arrived at the funeral with documents claiming my father had signed over the ranch as collateral. The papers I took proved they're forgeries." Quinn's jaw tightened. "Holloway's made his fortune that way. Buys judges, threatens witnesses. No one's been able to bring him to justice." "Until now," Penelope said firmly. "The federal marshal in Helena is my father's cousin. He'll help me if I can reach him." "It's a 4-day ride to Helena from here," Quinn said, frowning, "and Holloway's men will be watching the roads." "I have to try," Penelope insisted. "Everything my father built, everything he wanted to leave for me, I can't let Holloway steal it." Quinn studied her determined expression. "You're not what I expected, Miss Matthews." "And what did you expect, Mr. Harrington?" A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Not someone willing to risk getting shot to retrieve a deed and a ring. The deed is my future. The ring is my past." She touched the pouch that now hung from a cord around her neck, beneath her dress. "Both are worth fighting for." Something shifted in Quinn's gaze, respect, perhaps, or understanding. He pushed back from the table. "Let's see how steady you are on your feet. We'll take a short walk outside." The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine from the distant mountains. Quinn walked beside Penelope, close enough to catch her if she faltered but giving her space to test her strength. They moved slowly around the yard, Penelope gaining confidence with each step. "Tell me about your ranch," Quinn said. "What made it special?" Penelope's face brightened. "My father built it from nothing. He came west after meeting my mother in St. Louis. She was half Crow, though she'd been raised by missionaries after her parents died. My father loved her spirit, her connection to the land." Her voice softened with memory. "We raised cattle and horses. My father had a gift with horses. He could gentle the wildest Mustang. He taught me everything he knew." "You're a horsewoman then?" "Since I could walk," she confirmed. "My mother died when I was 12, but before that, she taught me the Crow ways of understanding horses." "They speak a language if you learn to listen." Quinn nodded. "My father said something similar. He was a horse trader in Tennessee before the war." They had reached a corral where several horses grazed, including the black stallion Penelope had seen yesterday. The magnificent animal raised its head, ears pricked forward with interest. "That's Thunderbolt," Quinn said, a note of pride in his voice. "Best cow horse I've ever owned. Found him running wild in the mountains 3 years ago." Penelope approached the fence, and the stallion walked over, stretching its neck to sniff her outstretched hand. "He's beautiful," she murmured, admiring the horse's powerful build and intelligent eyes. To Quinn's surprise, Thunderbolt, normally wary of strangers, pushed his nose against Penelope's palm, nickering softly. Well, I'll be damned, he said. He doesn't take to people easily. Penelope smiled, stroking the horse's velvety nose. He recognizes a friend. She spoke softly to the stallion in words Quinn didn't understand Crow, he realized. Your mother taught you her language. Some, Penelope replied, still focused on the horse. Mostly the words for important things: horses, water, family. Quinn watched her with the stallion, noting the gentle confidence in her hands and the way Thunderbolt responded to her. There was something remarkable about this woman who had survived being shot, who had collapsed from exhaustion, yet still burned with determination to reclaim what was hers. Your arm is bleeding again, he observed, noticing a small red stain spreading on her sleeve. Penelope glanced down with surprise. I didn't even feel it. Come on. Let's have Martha look at it when she returns. You've done enough for your first day up. As they walked back to the house, Quinn found himself studying Penelope's profile, the stubborn set of her chin, the delicate curve of her cheek, the spray of freckles across her nose. She was unlike any woman he'd ever met, combining feminine grace with fierce resolve. What will you do if you get your ranch back? He asked. Rebuild what Holloway destroyed, she replied without hesitation. He sold off our cattle and horses for quick profit. I'll start over one step at a time. Alone, Penelope's step faltered slightly, but she lifted her chin. If necessary, I'm not afraid of hard work. I don't doubt that, Quinn said quietly, but ranching alone is more than hard work. It's nearly impossible. Do you speak from experience, Mr. Harrington? She asked, glancing at him. Call me Quinn, he said. And yes. This place nearly broke me the first year. If not for James and Martha moving nearby, I might have given up. They had reached the porch steps and Penelope paused, turning to face him. Then why do it? Why choose this life? Quinn's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the carefully constructed walls he maintained seemed to lower. Because it's honest work. Because at the end of the day, what I've built is mine, earned by my own hands. Something haunted flickered in his gaze. And because it's quiet here. A man can hear himself think. Before Penelope could respond, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Quinn's hand moved instinctively to his side, though he wasn't wearing his gun belt. Stay here, he ordered, his voice suddenly hard. He strode quickly into the house, emerging moments later with a Winchester rifle. Penelope's heart raced as she scanned the approaching riders. Is it Holloway's men? Quinn relaxed slightly, lowering the rifle. No, it's James and Martha. He glanced at her pale face. But it's good to be cautious. Holloway won't give up easily. As James and Martha rode into the yard, Quinn helped Penelope to a chair on the porch. Rest here. I need to speak with James. Martha dismounted and hurried to the porch while Quinn conferred with his brother in low tones. You're looking better today, Martha said cheerfully, though her eyes betrayed concern. But you've reopened your wound. Let's get you inside and change that bandage. As Martha led her inside, Penelope glanced back to see the two brothers still deep in conversation, their expressions grave. Whatever they were discussing, it wasn't good news. Later that evening, after Martha had rebandaged her arm and returned home, Penelope sat in Quinn's small parlor, watching him stoke the fire. They had shared a simple supper, during which Quinn had been unusually quiet. Are you going to tell me what's troubling you? She finally asked. What did James say that has you looking like a thundercloud? Quinn straightened, brushing his hands on his pants. James was in Clearwater this morning. Holloway's men were there, showing your likeness around, offering a reward for information. Penelope's blood ran cold. How did they know to look in Clearwater? It's the nearest town to where you disappeared. They're working their way outward, checking every settlement within riding distance. He sat heavily in the chair opposite her. They're offering $500 for information on your whereabouts. That's a fortune in these parts, Penelope whispered, understanding the implications. Someone will talk. Quinn nodded grimly. James said they've already gotten tips sending them in various directions. But it won't be long before someone remembers I was in town the day before yesterday, buying medical supplies. I have to leave, Penelope said, rising to her feet. I've put you in danger long enough. Sit down, Quinn said firmly. Running now would be suicide. You're still weak and they're watching the roads. What choice do I have? She demanded. I won't have your blood on my hands. There's always a choice, he replied, his eyes holding hers steadily. I'm taking you to Helena myself. Penelope stared at him in disbelief. Why would you risk your life for a stranger? Quinn was silent for a long moment, the firelight casting shadows across his face. Because 20 years ago, no one stood up for my family when we needed it, because I've spent too many years looking the other way. His voice roughened. And because you deserve a fighting chance. Your ranch, James will look after it. He leaned forward, his expression intense. We'll leave tomorrow night, travel cross-country instead of using the main roads. I know these mountains better than Holloway's men. Penelope felt tears prick her eyes at his unexpected offer. I can't ask this of you. You didn't ask. I'm offering. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Besides, I've been wanting to have a word with Victor Holloway for some time. Man tried to buy my water rights last year, sent some unsavory characters when I refused. He's dangerous, Quinn. So am I when pushed. The simple statement carried the weight of experience. Now get some rest. Tomorrow will be busy. The next day passed in a flurry of preparations. Quinn and James moved quietly but efficiently, gathering supplies, checking weapons, and planning their route. Martha packed food and medical supplies, her usual cheerfulness subdued by the seriousness of the situation. Penelope insisted on helping despite her injury, preparing her borrowed clothes for the journey and assisting Martha with the provisions. By mid-afternoon, everything was ready. They would leave after dark, when their departure would be less likely to be noticed. As the sun began to set, Quinn found Penelope in the barn, saying goodbye to Thunderbolt. The stallion nuzzled her hand affectionately. He'll miss you, Quinn said, leaning against the stall door. Never seen him take to anyone like that. Penelope stroked the horse's sleek neck. I'll miss him too. She turned to face Quinn. I want to thank you for everything. Not many men would do what you're doing. Don't thank me yet. We've got a long journey ahead. Even if we don't make it, you've already done more than anyone could expect. She stepped closer to him. Why, Quinn? The real reason. It's not just about Holloway or something that happened 20 years ago. Quinn's stormy eyes searched her face. Maybe I'm tired of watching good people lose to men like Holloway. Maybe I'm tired of hiding out on my ranch, pretending the rest of the world doesn't exist. Is that what you've been doing? Hiding? He didn't answer directly. We should head back to the house. It's nearly time. But as he turned to leave, Penelope caught his arm. Whatever happened in your past, Quinn Harrington, it doesn't define who you are now. For a moment, he seemed about to speak, vulnerability flashing across his features. Then his expression closed, and he gently removed her hand from his arm. We leave in an hour. Be ready. Night had fallen completely when they set out, the moon providing just enough light to see. Quinn led the way on Thunderbolt, with Penelope riding a steady mare named Daisy. They traveled in silence, taking a little used trail that wound through the foothills toward the mountains. Penelope was grateful for the sturdy trousers and shirt Martha had provided from her own son's clothes. Despite the impropriety of a woman wearing men's clothing, it made riding much easier, especially with her injured arm. Quinn set a careful pace, mindful of Penelope's condition, and the need to keep the horses fresh for what would be a long journey. They rode until well past midnight before stopping in a sheltered canyon to rest the horses. "How are you holding up?" Quinn asked quietly as he helped her dismount. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "I'm fine," she assured him, though her arm throbbed and exhaustion weighed on her. "How far have we come?" "About 15 miles as the crow flies. We're taking a roundabout route to avoid the main trails." He unsaddled the horses and rubbed them down while Penelope spread a blanket on the ground. "Try to get some sleep. I'll keep watch." "You need rest too," she protested. "I'll wake you in a few hours to take your turn," he promised, though they both knew he wouldn't. Penelope was too tired to argue further. She wrapped herself in the blanket and was asleep almost immediately. Quinn watched her for a moment, struck by how peaceful she looked in sleep, the worry lines smoothed from her face. Then he settled himself against a tree, rifle across his knees, to maintain his vigil. They continued this pattern for the next 2 days, riding through the night and early morning, resting during the heat of the day in secluded locations, then resuming their journey in the late afternoon. Quinn knew the terrain intimately, avoiding settlements and choosing paths that even experienced trackers would have difficulty following. Despite her determination not to be a burden, Penelope's strength began to flag by the 3rd day. The wound on her arm had reopened twice, and the long hours in the saddle took their toll on her still recovering body. She said nothing, but Quinn noticed her increasing pallor and the way she swayed slightly in the saddle. As dusk fell on the 3rd day, they reached a small, abandoned trapper's cabin nestled in a grove of pines. Quinn decided they would stop for the night, giving Penelope a chance to properly rest. "It's not much," he said as he helped her down from her horse, "but it's shelter, and there's a spring nearby." The cabin was indeed modest, a single room with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table, and a platform bed frame covered in old pine boughs. But after days of sleeping on the ground, it seemed luxurious to Penelope. Quinn quickly built a small fire while Penelope unpacked their food supplies. They ate a simple meal of jerky, hard biscuits, and dried apples, washing it down with fresh spring water. "How much farther to Helena?" Penelope asked, trying to keep the weariness from her voice. "Another day and a half if we push hard," Quinn replied, studying her face in the firelight. "But we're going to rest here tonight and most of tomorrow. You need it." "We don't have time," she protested. "Holloway's men won't find us here," he interrupted. "This cabin isn't on any map. An old mountain man showed it to me years ago. Besides, you're no good to anyone if you collapse again." Penelope wanted to argue but lacked the energy. Her arm throbbed painfully, and every muscle in her body ached from the unaccustomed days of hard riding. "Let me look at that arm," Quinn said, moving to sit beside her. Carefully, he rolled up her sleeve and unwrapped the bandage. The wound was red and inflamed, though not infected. He cleaned it with water from his canteen, then applied a salve Martha had packed. "It needs proper medical attention," he said as he rewrapped it with a clean bandage. "The doctor in Helena can stitch it properly." His hands were gentle despite their size and roughness, and Penelope found herself watching his face as he worked. In the flickering firelight, with his guard down as he concentrated on tending her wound, Quinn looked younger, the hard lines of his face softened. "How did you end up in Montana?" she asked softly. "You mentioned being a lawman in Kansas." Quinn's hands stilled momentarily before resuming their work. "Dodge City. I was a deputy there for 3 years. That must have been difficult." A wry smile touched his lips. "That's one word for it." Dodge was wild, then cowboys, gamblers, outlaws, all passing through. He finished with the bandage and moved back to his side of the fire. I'd seen enough killing by the time I left. Because of the war, Quinn's expression closed. The war was part of it. He poked at the fire with a stick. You should try to sleep. Take the bed. I'll be fine here by the fire. Penelope recognized his tone. The conversation was over. She was too tired to press further, though her curiosity about this complex man only grew. She settled onto the pine bough bed, pulling her blanket around her, and fell into an exhausted sleep. She awoke sometime in the night to find Quinn sitting by the dying fire, staring into the embers. His profile was illuminated by the faint glow, his expression distant and troubled. Without thinking, she spoke. "What keeps you awake, Quinn?" He turned, surprised to find her watching him. "Old ghosts," he replied after a moment. "They visit more often at night." Penelope sat up, wincing at her stiff muscles. "Do you want to talk about them?" Quinn was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a low voice, he began to speak. "I was 16 when the war broke out. My father opposed secession, which made us unpopular in our Tennessee town. When Confederate soldiers came through, they took our horses. My father protested." His voice hardened. "They shot him in our front yard. My mother begged our neighbors for help, but no one came." Penelope's heart ached for the boy he had been. "I'm sorry. I joined the Union cavalry the next day, lied about my age, fought for 3 years. His eyes reflected the dying firelight. "After the war, I couldn't go home. Drifted west, worked as a ranch hand, then a deputy." He shrugged. "The rest you know. And in all that time, you never married." The question slipped out before she could stop it. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Never found a woman willing to take on a scarred ex-lawman living in the middle of nowhere." His eyes met hers across the fire. "Until recently, I never minded the solitude." The implication of his words hung in the air between them. Penelope felt heat rise to her cheeks, and it had nothing to do with the fire. "Get some sleep, Penelope," Quinn said gently. "Dawn comes early." They remained at the cabin through the next day, as Quinn had insisted. He spent the morning checking and cleaning his weapons while Penelope rested. By afternoon, she felt considerably stronger and joined him outside, where he was brushing down the horses. "We'll leave at first light tomorrow," he told her. "It's a hard day's ride to Helena from here, but we should make it by nightfall." "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." Quinn nodded, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Let's hope your cousin the Marshal is as helpful as you believe. Marshal Reynolds is a good man. He and my father were close." She hesitated. "What will you do after? Return to your ranch?" "That's the plan," he replied, focusing on Thunderbolt's coat. "Unless Holloway's men burn it down before I get back. I'm sorry I've brought this trouble to you." Quinn paused in his brushing to look at her directly. "Don't be. Some troubles are worth facing head-on." Their eyes held for a long moment, and Penelope felt something shift between them, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had voiced. Then Quinn turned back to his task, and the moment passed. That evening, as they shared their last meal before the final push to Helena, Quinn seemed unusually thoughtful. Finally, he spoke. "What will you do after you see the Marshal, if he helps you reclaim your ranch?" Penelope considered the question. "Rebuild, as I said. It won't be easy, but that land is all I have left of my parents." "It's a lot for one person to manage alone," Quinn observed, his eyes on the fire rather than her face. "I'll hire help," she replied. "Though it will take time to make it profitable again." Quinn nodded slowly. "Or you could consider a partner." Penelope's heart skipped a beat. A partner, someone with experience, someone willing to combine resources. Now he looked at her, his expression unreadable in the firelight, just something to consider. Before she could respond, he stood abruptly. "We should turn in early. Tomorrow will be a long day." As Penelope lay on the pine bough bed that night, sleep eluded her. Quinn's words echoed in her mind. Was he suggesting what she thought? A business arrangement or something more? The idea stirred feelings she hadn't expected: hope, anticipation, and a flutter of something deeper that she wasn't ready to name. Across the cabin, Quinn lay awake as well, questioning his own impulsive suggestion. He'd lived alone for so long, content with his solitude. Yet in just a few days, this determined, courageous woman had awakened long dormant feelings. He told himself it was just admiration for her spirit, nothing more. But in the honesty of the night, he knew it was a lie. They set out at dawn, riding hard through terrain that grew increasingly rugged as they approached Helena. Quinn pushed the pace, aware that they were now traveling closer to established trails where they might encounter others. By mid-afternoon, they crested a ridge that offered a sweeping view of the valley below, with Helena visible in the distance. "We made it," Penelope said, relief evident in her voice. "Not quite yet," Quinn cautioned. "The last few miles are the most dangerous. Holloway will have men watching the approaches to town." As if to confirm his words, they spotted dust rising from the main road below, riders moving fast toward Helena. "Holloway's men?" Penelope asked. Quinn nodded grimly. "Likely. We'll have to circle wide, approach from the north after dark." They retreated from the ridge and followed a deer trail through dense forest, adding hours to their journey but avoiding the main roads. The sun was setting by the time they reached the outskirts of Helena. "We'll leave the horses here," Quinn decided, choosing a small clearing sheltered by trees. Less conspicuous to enter town on foot. They secured the horses, and Quinn retrieved his spare revolver from his saddlebag, checking it before handing it to Penelope. "You know how to use this." She took it with a steady hand. "My father taught me. I'm a fair shot." Quinn nodded, unsurprised. "Keep it hidden but accessible. With luck, we won't need them." They entered Helena as full darkness fell, keeping to side streets and shadows. The town was busy despite the late hour, with saloons and gambling halls doing brisk business. Quinn led them toward the northern end of town, where the federal offices were located. "The marshal's office is in that brick building," Penelope said, pointing. "And he lives in the White House behind it." They approached cautiously, alert for any sign of Holloway's men. The office was dark, but lamplight glowed in the windows of the house. "Wait here," Quinn said, guiding Penelope into the shadows between two buildings. "I'll check if the coast is clear." "Be careful," she whispered, her hand briefly touching his arm. Quinn moved silently toward the marshal's house, years of experience making him one with the shadows. He had nearly reached the back door when he froze, hearing voices from around the front of the house. "Sure she'll come here," a gruff voice was saying. "Holloway wants men watching round the clock." "Marshall ain't even here," another voice replied. "Rode out to Fort Harrison yesterday. Won't be back till tomorrow." Quinn retreated carefully, processing this new information. The marshal was away and Holloway's men were watching his house. They needed a new plan. He returned to Penelope and relayed what he'd overheard. "We'll have to find somewhere to lay low until tomorrow," he concluded. "I know a place an old friend runs a boarding house on the edge of town. She's discreet." They made their way through back alleys to a modest two-story house set back from the street. Quinn knocked softly in a distinctive pattern. After a moment, the door opened slightly, and an elderly woman peered out. "Quinn Harrington," she said, surprise and pleasure in her voice. "It's been ages." "Hello, Rose. We need a place to stay quietly." Rose's sharp eyes took in Penelope and Quinn's tense posture. Without further questions, she opened the door wider. "Come in, quickly." Once inside, Rose led them to a small parlor and closed the curtains before lighting a lamp. In the warm light, Penelope could see she was in her 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes that missed nothing. "Trouble?" Rose asked Quinn directly. "The kind with guns," he confirmed. "We need to lay low until we can see Marshal Reynolds tomorrow." Rose nodded. "I have a room at the back, no windows facing the street. No one will know you're here." She looked at Penelope. "You look dead on your feet, child, and that arm needs attention." "This is Penelope Matthews," Quinn introduced. "Penelope, Rose Anderson, was a nurse during the war. She patched me up more than once." "Let me see that arm," Rose said, already moving to retrieve her medical bag. With practiced efficiency, she cleaned and properly stitched Penelope's wound, then made them both eat a hearty meal before showing them to the promised room. "There's only one bed," she told them with a raised eyebrow. "I assume that's not a problem." Before Penelope could stammer a response, Quinn said, "I'll sleep on the floor, Rose." The older woman smiled knowingly. "As you wish. Sleep well, both of you." Left alone, an awkward silence fell between them. The room was small but clean, with a comfortable-looking bed, a washstand, and a single chair. "You take the bed," Quinn said, removing his gun belt and placing it within easy reach. "I've slept on worse than this floor." "This is ridiculous," Penelope said, surprising herself with her boldness. "The bed is large enough for both of us. We can be adults about this." Quinn looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Are you sure?" "We've spent 3 nights in the wilderness together," she pointed out. "I trust you, Quinn." Something flickered in his eyes at her words. "Very well," he said finally, "but I'll stay on top of the covers." They settled into an awkward arrangement, Quinn fully clothed atop the quilt, Penelope beneath it. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her, acutely aware of his presence beside her. "Quinn," she said softly into the darkness, "what did you mean earlier about considering a partner?" He was silent for so long she thought he might have fallen asleep. Then his deep voice came quietly. "Exactly what it sounded like. My ranch is modest but profitable. Yours has potential, especially with the right stock. Together, they could be something significant." "A business arrangement, then," she said, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. Quinn turned his head to look at her, his profile visible in the faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. "Is that what you want it to be?" Penelope's heart raced at the implication in his words. "What if I wanted more than a business partner?" Quinn's breath caught audibly. Slowly, he reached across the space between them, his hand finding hers atop the quilt. "Then I'd say we're thinking along the same lines." Their fingers intertwined, and in that simple touch was a promise neither was ready to voice aloud. They fell asleep that way, hands joined across the barrier of the quilt, both acutely aware that something fundamental had changed between them. Morning brought new resolve. They would find Marshal Reynolds and finally bring Holloway to justice. After a hasty breakfast provided by Rose, they prepared to leave for the marshal's office. "Be careful," Rose warned as they prepared to depart. "Holloway's influence reaches far in these parts." "We will," Quinn assured her, clasping her hand warmly. "Thank you, Rose." They took a circuitous route to the federal building, Quinn constantly alert for any sign of Holloway's men. The marshal's office was open, a young deputy sitting at the desk inside. "I need to see Marshal Reynolds," Penelope said. "It's urgent." The deputy looked up skeptically. "The marshal is busy. Who's asking?" "Tell him Penelope Matthews is here. I'm William Matthews's daughter." Recognition flickered in the deputy's eyes. "Miss Matthews." "The marshal's been worried sick about you. There are posters claiming you're wanted for theft." "Those are Holloway's lies," Quinn said flatly. "We have proof." The deputy hesitated only briefly before standing. "Wait here." He disappeared through a door at the back of the office. Moments later, a tall man with graying hair and a marshal's badge burst through the door. Penelope, thank God you're alive. Marshal Jonathan Reynolds enveloped Penelope in a bear hug, then held her at arm's length to examine her. Are you hurt? We heard rumors you'd been shot. I'm fine, Uncle John, she assured him, using the familiar name from her childhood. Thanks to Quinn. She introduced the two men who sized each other up with the wariness of experienced lawmen. You got her here safely, Reynolds said to Quinn. I'm in your debt. She's pretty capable on her own, Quinn replied. I just provided directions. Reynolds ushered them into his private office, closing the door firmly. Now, tell me everything. Holloway's been claiming you stole valuable documents and family heirlooms from him. Penelope removed the pouch from around her neck and emptied its contents on the marshal's desk. I took nothing that wasn't rightfully mine. Here's my father's original deed to the ranch, and here, she pointed to several documents with obvious discrepancies, are the forged papers Holloway created. Reynolds examined the documents carefully, his expression darkening. This is blatant forgery. And this witness signature, Samuel Cartwright, died 2 years before this document was supposedly signed. Holloway didn't expect anyone to challenge him, Penelope said. He thought I was just a helpless woman who would run away. He underestimated you, Quinn said, pride evident in his voice. Reynolds looked between them, noting their exchanged glance. Holloway's in town, you know, arrived yesterday claiming he's here on legitimate business. He's here for me, Penelope said grimly. He knows I'd come to you. The marshal nodded. I can arrest him for the forgery, but he has friends in high places. It might not stick without more evidence. What about attempted murder? Quinn suggested. He ordered his men to shoot Penelope. I found her bleeding in my wheat field. Can you identify the men who shot at you? Reynolds asked Penelope. She shook her head. It was too chaotic, but they were definitely Holloway's men. He was there watching when they chased me into the fields. Reynolds considered this. It's your word against his, but combined with the forgery evidence. He straightened decisively. It's enough to bring him in for questioning, at least. I'll send deputies to his hotel now. He won't come quietly, Quinn warned. I know, Reynolds agreed, but we'll do this by the book. He looked at Penelope with concern. You should stay here where it's safe. No, she said firmly. I want to face him. I want him to know he didn't break me. Reynolds recognized the Matthews' stubbornness in her expression and nodded reluctantly. Very well, but you stay behind me at all times. Quinn's hand moved to his gun. I'll be right beside her. The confrontation came sooner than expected. As they exited the marshal's office, Victor Holloway himself was approaching the building, flanked by 2 rough-looking men. He stopped short at the sight of Penelope, his florid face darkening with anger. There she is, he bellowed, pointing. The thief! Arrest her, Marshal. Reynolds stepped forward, his hand resting on his gun. Victor Holloway, I have evidence of your forgery and attempted murder of Miss Matthews. You're coming with me for questioning. Holloway's face twisted with rage. This is outrageous. I'm a respected businessman. You're a thief and a murderer, Penelope said clearly, stepping up beside the marshal despite Quinn's attempt to keep her back. You killed my father as surely as if you'd shot him yourself. You stupid girl, Holloway snarled. You should have taken the money I offered and disappeared. So you admit you tried to buy her off? Reynolds pressed, signaling to his deputies who had emerged from the office. Holloway realized his mistake too late. His eyes darted to his men, a silent signal passing between them. In an instant, all 3 drew their weapons. Down, Quinn shouted, pushing Penelope behind a water trough as gunfire erupted. The street exploded into chaos. Bystanders scattered, screaming. Reynolds and his deputies returned fire, forcing Holloway and his men to take cover behind a wagon. Quinn drew his revolver, carefully aiming and firing in measured shots. "Stay down," he ordered Penelope. But Penelope had drawn her own gun. When one of Holloway's men tried to circle behind the deputies, she fired, hitting him in the shoulder. The man dropped his weapon, howling in pain. The firefight was brief but intense. When it ended, one of Holloway's men lay dead, the other wounded. Holloway himself was pinned behind the wagon, his gun arm bleeding where a bullet had grazed him. "It's over, Holloway," Reynolds called. "Throw out your weapon and surrender." For a tense moment, it seemed Holloway might choose death over capture. Then, with a curse, he tossed his gun into the street and raised his hands. As deputies moved in to arrest him, Holloway's hateful gaze found Penelope. "This isn't over, girl. I have friends you can't imagine." "It is over," she replied steadily. "You'll never hurt anyone again." As Holloway was led away, Quinn pulled Penelope into his arms, his heart racing with residual fear. "Are you all right?" She nodded against his chest, the reality of what had just happened beginning to sink in. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Reynolds approached them, holstering his weapon. "That was quite a shooting gallery. You two make a formidable team." He looked at Quinn with new respect. "Former lawman," Quinn nodded. "Dodge City. Thought so. Recognized the stance." Reynolds turned to Penelope. "Your father would be proud, girl. You've got his courage and your mother's fire." In the aftermath, statements were taken, wounds treated, and formal charges filed against Holloway. The evidence was overwhelming, especially after Holloway's public admission and attempt to kill a federal marshal. Even his influential friends would have difficulty protecting him now. By late afternoon, Penelope and Quinn found themselves alone in Reynolds' office, the excitement finally subsiding. "What happens now?" Quinn asked. "With your ranch, Uncle John says it will take some legal proceedings, but the property will be restored to me. Holloway will be forced to pay restitution for the cattle and horses he sold." She looked at Quinn uncertainly. "That partnership you mentioned, does the offer still stand?" Quinn took her hands in his expression serious. "The offer stands. But I was thinking of a more permanent arrangement than just a business partnership." Penelope's breath caught. "What kind of arrangement?" "The kind that would give me the right to protect you for the rest of our lives. The kind that would join our ranches, our lives, our futures." His voice roughened with emotion. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other for days. But sometimes a man just knows when he's found what he's been looking for his whole life." Tears sprang to Penelope's eyes. "I thought I was imagining it, this connection between us." "It's real," Quinn assured her, raising a hand to gently touch her cheek. "As real as anything I've ever known." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to everything, the partnership, the future, all of it." Quinn's smile transformed his face, erasing years of solitude and hardship. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, he leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first, then deepening as Penelope responded, her arms winding around his neck. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought I'd find someone who could make me want to leave my solitude behind. And I never thought I'd find someone who would carry me when I couldn't stand on my own," Penelope replied softly, "both literally and figuratively." Marshal Reynolds cleared his throat loudly from the doorway, his expression a mixture of amusement and approval. "If you two are finished making plans, I have news. The judge has agreed to hear Penelope's case immediately. With the evidence we have, your ranch should be restored to you within the week." "Thank you, Uncle John," Penelope said, not moving from Quinn's embrace. Reynolds smiled knowingly. "I see you two have come to an understanding." "We have," Quinn confirmed, his arm tightening around Penelope's waist. "If you have no objections, Marshal, I'd like your permission to marry your cousin." Reynolds laughed. "My permission? You clearly don't know Matthews women very well yet, Harrington. They make their own decisions. His expression softened. But for what it's worth, you have my blessing. You're a good man, I can see that. 1 month later, Quinn and Penelope stood together on the porch of her family's ranch house. It had taken work to make it habitable again after Holloway's neglect, but with Quinn's help and the assistance of neighbors glad to see the Matthews ranch restored to its rightful owner, the place was beginning to feel like home again. They had been married the previous week in a small ceremony in Helena, with Marshal Reynolds giving the bride away and Rose serving as witness. Now they faced the challenge of rebuilding 2 ranches into one thriving operation. You regret it? Penelope asked, leaning against Quinn's solid strength as they watched the sunset paint the distant mountains gold. Taking on all this work, all this responsibility. Quinn's arms encircled her from behind, his chin resting on her head. Not for a second. This is what I've wanted without knowing it, a purpose beyond myself, a partner to share it with. Penelope turned in his arms to face him. I still can't believe how much my life has changed in such a short time, from collapsing in your wheat field to standing here as your wife. Best day of my life, finding you in that field, Quinn said, his voice husky with emotion. Even if you did bleed all over my best shirt, she laughed, the sound carrying across the open land. I'll make it up to you for the rest of our lives. I'm counting on it, he murmured, bending to kiss her as the last rays of sunlight gilded their entwined figures. In the distance, a small herd of horses grazed peacefully, the beginning of their new breeding program. Among them was Thunderbolt, who had taken to the Matthews ranch as readily as his master had. It was a beginning, full of promise and possibility. They would face challenges, certainly. Ranching was never easy, especially in the unpredictable Montana territory. But they would face those challenges together. 2 strong individuals who had found in each other exactly what they needed: strength when they faltered, courage when they doubted, and love to sustain them through whatever came. As darkness fell, they went inside their home, closing the door on the wild land that had brought them together. Tomorrow would bring new tasks, new obstacles, new triumphs. But tonight was theirs alone, a precious moment in the story they were just beginning to write together. 5 years later, Penelope stood in that same doorway, watching as Quinn taught their 4-year-old son, William, to ride his first pony. Their 2-year-old daughter, Rose, clung to her skirts, eager to join her brother but still too small for her own mount. The combined Harrington-Matthews ranch had prospered beyond their expectations. Their reputation for quality horses had spread throughout the territory, bringing buyers from as far away as California. The wheat fields where they had first met now stretched to the horizon, golden and abundant. "Mama, look," William called excitedly as he completed a circuit of the corral on his patient pony, Quinn walking alongside with a steadying hand. "I see you, my brave boy," Penelope called back, her heart swelling with pride and love. Rose tugged at her skirt. "Me ride too, Mama." "Soon, little one," Penelope promised, lifting the child into her arms. "When you're a bit bigger like William." Quinn led the pony back to where they stood, William sitting tall and proud in the saddle. "We have a natural horseman here," Quinn said, his face alight with fatherly pride. "Just like his mother." "And his father," Penelope added, reaching out to touch Quinn's weathered cheek. That evening, with the children asleep, Penelope and Quinn sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge above their land. Quinn's arm was around her shoulders, her head resting against him in the comfortable way of long married couples. "You ever think about that day?" Quinn asked softly. "When you collapsed in my wheat field?" Penelope smiled, remembering. "Sometimes. It was the worst day of my life until it became the best." You looked so small and fragile when I carried you, Quinn mused. But even then, I could sense your strength. I wasn't strong then, she disagreed. I was terrified, exhausted, nearly broken. Quinn shook his head. You were always strong, Penelope. You just needed someone to help you stand until you remembered it yourself. She turned to look at him, this man who had become her partner in every sense of the word. And you needed someone to remind you that solitude isn't the same as peace. Fair enough, he acknowledged with a smile. We saved each other. They fell silent, content in each other's company as the night deepened around them. Their journey from that fateful day in the wheat field had not been without challenges. There had been harsh winters, failed crops, difficult births of both children. There had been disputes with neighbors, threats from cattle rustlers, and the ever-present challenges of carving a life from the unforgiving land. But through it all, they had stood together, finding in each other the strength to face whatever came. And in the process, they had built something precious and rare, a true partnership, a family, a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. As the moon rose over the land they both loved, Quinn kissed his wife tenderly, grateful beyond words for the day she had collapsed in his wheat field and changed his life forever.